orange table, blue table. Much better. There we go. I'm right here. Speaker's over here, so you're facing this way. All right, so we are going to sit on the carpet on a 0 voice level. Raise your hand and tell me, what should you do if you have something to say? Aiden.
Raise your hand.
Raise your hand, just like you just did. Perfect. Perfect little practice. All right, so we are going to be on a 0. How will I know that you're paying attention? How do I know that you're tracking with me, that you're paying attention, Jocelyn? Because you're looking at me. Good. What else? Robert? Well, if I call on you, you know the answer. Remember what we called that at the beginning of the year? We called that actively participating. What does it mean to actively participate? Demisha. Okay, when the teacher calls on you, you have an answer. What else does it mean to actively participate? Robert. Right, asking and answering questions. Asking and answering questions. Miss Brown's group. Who do I? Oh, it's in your group.
Matthew and Nevaeh.
Matthew and Nevaeh. So we should be actively participating, sitting on a 0. All right. Who can tell me what a want is? If I say, that's a want. What's a want? It's kind of a funny question. Jocelyn? Something that you want, but you don't need. Who can give me an example of a want? Robert? Toys. Okay. Alexis? What? Lunch? Well, I think you need food. So I guess you don't need lunch, but you do need food. So I don't know if lunch would be a good example of a want. Keep thinking. Aiden?
Games.
Games, okay. Renaya? Cake, maybe. Okay, cake is probably a want because we need food, but we don't necessarily need cake. Elise? Candy. Okay, let's get off the food. Let's talk about something else. Jocelyn? What? Dog? Dolls? Right, dolls. Okay. Tanisha? Your favorite kind of shoes. This is one we talked about. Who remembers this book that we read? It's called Those Shoes. We really liked this book. It was a... Oh, I'm sorry. I'm talking. If we have something to say, we're raising our hand. These shoes. Who could tell me about this book? Who can tell me what happened in this book? We read this book for a different lesson. I think on maybe, I can't remember, maybe Cause and Effect or something. We read this book for something else. Glenn?
It's about a boy that doesn't like his shoes and everyone else got those kind of different kind of shoes that he wants them.
Right. He keeps looking at these shoes and saying, those shoes. Everybody has those shoes. And we talked about with this book, did everybody really have those shoes? No, just a lot of people had the shoes. So he felt like he really wanted the shoes. Now, did he need the coolest shoes?
No.
Did he need shoes?
Yes.
Yes, we talked about shoes are kind of a need. We need shoes, but do we need the coolest, most expensive shoes?
No.
No, those are just a want. I don't know why your shoes off. It's not calling directions. Those are just a want. We talked about it at the end. What happened at the end of this book? So we're raising our hand if we have an answer. Raising our hand. mom. They went to the thrift store. What did you find at the thrift store? Hayden? The shoes. Well, does anybody remember what was wrong with the shoes? Luis?
They were so small.
They were too small, right? They were like a size too small. So he wore them, and what happens when you wear shoes that are too small? Robert? Your feet hurt. I've done that before. If I go to the shoe store and they don't have my size, and maybe the shoes are on sale or something, and I get them, and then my feet hurt. Because it's not comfortable to wear shoes that are too small. That's why they make shoes in your size. So his feet hurt. So his feet are hurting. He's squishing his shoes. He's got Band-Aids all over his feet here. Why do you think he has Band-Aids all over his feet? Luis?
Because the shoe was hurting him.
Because the shoe is hurting him, just like we just said. Good. All right, so then he sees this little kid at school. He's telling himself, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. What does he do at the end of the book? What does he do at the end of the book? Denisha? He gives his friend who also has lame shoes. He gives his friend those shoes. And then, what does his grandma buy him? Does anybody remember? This is like the best part of the whole book. What does his grandma buy him? Jared?
The shoes.
Not the shoes he wanted, no. Luis? Boots! Good job, Luis. Boots, snow boots. And at the end of the story, it ended up being really great that he had snow boots. Why? Robert? Right, because we talked about how he lived in New York, he lived somewhere very northern where it snows a lot. So he needed boots way more than he needed cool shoes so that his feet weren't cold. So at the end of the book, he ended up getting what he really needed. So, who can tell me the difference between a want and a need? Jocelyn. Right, a need is, they're pretty straightforward words. We've learned about these words in kindergarten, first grade, second grade. We're just reviewing them right now. We know this. A want is just something that you want. That's why it's called a want. And a need is something that you need. That's why it's called a need. So let me see. Let me give you an example of a want or a need. Food. Raise your hand and tell me. Want or a need? Ariana. Need. A Snickers bar. Want or need? Aiden. Want. You need food, but do you need a Snickers bar?
No.
No. What about shoes? I have a question over here now, because this is what we've been talking about this whole time. Alexis? Do you think it'd be good to walk around barefoot? No. You step on rocks, that might hurt your feet. And you have to wear shoes to school because it's part of our uniform. If you were walking around barefoot, that would be silly. Aiden? Need. You need shoes. Now, what about the Jordans that come out on Friday? Or the peanut butter and jelly shoes like Glenn has? A want or a need? Jose? Thinking. You don't have an answer. I need you thinking. Precious? A want. Now, what about a house? Or a place to live? A place to live. Renaya? Need. Right, we need a place to live. We have to have a place to live. What about a giant mansion house with a pool and 27 dogs and a maid? Jonathan? Want. We might want that. No, I wouldn't want 27 dogs. But you might want that, but you don't need it. But you do need a place to live. So, today we're going to be talking about something a little different than wants and needs. We're going to be going a little bit further into something different. We're going to be talking about goods and services. And this is something you've probably actually heard first grade talking about it. So I know you've talked about it before, but we're just going to be a little refresher. Because we're going over the next, for the rest of the year really, in social studies, we're going to be talking about economics. Economics. Does anybody know what economics means? I don't even know how to describe it. I had to look it up. Does anybody know what economics means? Kamisha?
It's like services.
Well, that's goods and services, and it does have to do with services. Economics, the simplest definition I found for economics was how people use and manage their resources. Does anybody know what resources are? Robert? Something that you use, is that what you said? Kind of. There's lots of different kind of resources, and we're going to be talking about resources next week. But today we're just going to start talking about economics. We're talking about goods and services. So I can define basic economic terms related to markets. So all of these terms we're going to be talking about are all related to market. Today we're talking about wants and needs, which we've already reviewed. We're not even going to go any further with that. We're pretty good with that. Today we're going to be talking about goods and services. We're going to be talking about the difference between goods and services. And if you remember your pre-assessment yesterday, it asked you what's the difference between goods and services. And the answers were very interesting because I think some of us forgot what a good and a service is. Now, does anyone think they have a good definition for the word goods? Now, a lot of you all were thinking good just meant not great, just good. But I'm talking about goods. Not the word good, not the adjective, but the word goods. Anybody know what goods are? Aiden?
Like when you need something that you have to live.
Okay, so we're going to get away from wants and needs. We're kind of done talking about that right now, but okay. I thought the best definition for goods were items that you can physically touch or hold that will satisfy a want or a need. So a good is an item that you can physically hold. So if this book is a good. If I went to the store and bought this good, the store provided me with a good. Books are goods. Goods are something you can physically touch or hold. Things that can be bought and sold. So a good can be bought and sold. You can go to the grocery store, buy a bag of rice, and you can buy it. It's a good. Things like that are goods. The grocery store, Target, is full of goods. Think like if you've ever heard sports equipment called sporting goods. Kind of like the store Dick's Sporting Goods, where you can buy stuff for baseball, stuff for football. Those are goods. They're all things that can be bought and sold, something you can physically hold in your hand. So what do you think a service is? If I'm telling you goods and services are kind of opposites, if a good is something you can physically touch or hold, what do you think a service is? Ariana? Kind of like a store. That's going in the right direction. Good thought. Robert? Kind of. Yes. You're on the right track. Kind of somewhere where you work at and you get paid is what Robert said. A service is an action that someone provides to you to satisfy a want or a need. So a good is like something you can physically hold. A service is an action that someone provides to you, Elise. You should be sitting crisscross still looking at me. So the service is the action that someone provides to you. Services are kind of like verbs. So if you think about a service, you can kind of think about verbs. A good is kind of like a noun, something that is a person, place, or thing kind of thing. Services are kind of like something that someone can provide to you. A service is work that a person or company can provide to you. So if I give you a basketball, did I give you a good or a service? Alexis? What was my service? Jonathan? A good. Because you can physically hold the basketball in your hands. It's a good that I provided to you. Now what if I vacuum your room for you? Did I provide you with a good or a service? Louise? A service. Because I physically vacuumed your room. It's work I did for you. Work that I did for you. You don't have anything like to show, say, hey, look, Miss Blunt vacuumed my room. What about if I give you a tomato? Did I give you a good or a service? Did I provide you with a good or a service, Elise? A good, right, because you can physically hold that tomato. Look what Miss Blunt gave me, a tomato. I don't think I would give you a tomato. Well, maybe, who knows, maybe if you liked her. What about if I cooked you dinner? If I made you a gourmet sandwich for dinner? Yum. Did I provide you with a good or a service? Jaren? Me cooking you dinner is a service, but what is the sandwich? Denisha? Oh, good. So kind of both with that one. Because you could say, hey, Miss Blunt cooked me dinner. That's a service. But look at the sandwich she gave me. That's kind of like the good. So that one was kind of both. Some of them are a little bit tricky. What about if I say a firefighter? Does a firefighter provide you with a good or a service? Jonathan? A service. What kind of services does it provide you with? Fighting fires, right? Fighting fires. Jocelyn, what if I say, if I give you some books? Did I provide you with a good or a service? What? Good, right. Some books. What if I say a librarian? Does a librarian provide you with a good or a service? Alexis? A service, right? She shelves the library books, she keeps the library very organized. What about if I tell you a pharmacist? Does anybody know what a pharmacist is? Jonathan? It's where you get medicine, right. So does a pharmacist provide you with a good or a service? Miss Blunt? Yes. Thanks. Elise, you need to listen to Miss Craig. Does a pharmacist provide you with a good or a service? Aiden? A service. She fills your medicine. But what about the medicine that she gives you? Is your medication a good or a service? Renaya? A good, because you physically hold it in your hand. So we're going to read a little book, and we're going to do some inferencing with this book about goods and services and about wants and needs. It doesn't come out and talk about goods and services, but you're going to see why we can relate this book to goods and services. We're also going to be using this book throughout our economics unit because well, I don't remember what it's about, but it's a really good book. When I told Miss Griffey I was going to read it, she was like, I love that book. And I had never read it before, but I read it yesterday. It's a really good book, okay? So it's called Rocks of Boxing. Rocks of Boxing by Alice McLaren. Alice McLaren. Okay, so we're going to read it. It's pretty long, so we might read it pretty quickly, but we'll see. All right. So I need eyes up here. Focused. Very nice. Marion called it Rocks of Boxing. She always knew the name of everything. There, across the road, it looked like any rocky hill. Nothing but sand and rocks. Some old wooden boxes, cactus and greasewood and thorny octillo, but it was a special place. The street between Rocks of Boxing and the houses curved like a river. So Marion named it the River Road. After that, you had to ford a river to reach Rocks of Boxing. Of course, all of Marion's sisters came. Anna May and Frances and little Jean, Charles from next door, even though he was 12. Oh, and Eleanor, naturally, and Jamie with his brother Paul. Later on, there were others, but these were the first. Well, not the first, because Rocks of Boxing had always been there. It must have belonged to others long before. When Marion dug up a tin box filled with round black pebbles, everyone knew what it was. It was buried treasure. Those pebbles were the money of Rocks of Boxing. You could still find others like them if you looked hard enough. So some days became treasure hunting days, with everyone trying to find that special kind. And then on other days, you might just find one without even looking. So what did they use for money in Rocks of Boxing? What did they use for money? Jaren? Little black pebbles. So who can predict what they're doing here? Or infer, I guess. What are they doing? side of a hill. What are they doing on Roxaboxen, these kids? Robert?
They're digging for black pebbles
Why? Jocelyn?
because those pebbles are like money.
Are like money? Where? Could you take those pebbles to Walmart? No? So let's keep reading and we'll find out. A town of Roxaboxen began to grow. So what are they doing? What are they building? Aiden?
A city?
A city. They're good, Aiden. They're building a make-believe. Louise? Okay, Louise, Miss Crow needs you. Oh, she said Louise, not Elise. Okay. Thought it was really short. They're building a make-believe town. What's the money of their make-believe town? What do they use for money? Glenn? Pebbles. Right, like we just said. Traced in lines of stone. So you can see it there. They've like created a road with rocks. They're creating this little make-believe city. Main Street first, edged with the whitest ones, and then the houses. Charles made his of the biggest stones. After all, he was the oldest. At first the houses were very plain, but soon they all began to add more rooms. The old wooden boxes could be shelves or tables or anything you wanted. So they're putting these little wooden things together and creating little make-believe houses. Later on, there was a town hall. Marion was the mayor, of course. That was just the way she was. Nobody minded. What's a mayor? What's a mayor? Jaren? Kinda. They don't make stuff though, but they are in a city. Glenn?
A person that like is the like they run the city?
Right. They're person in charge of the city. The person in charge of the city. So the mayor is the person in charge of the city. Does the mayor provide a good or a service? Jonathan? A service, right. He runs the city. That's his service. After a while, they added other streets. Frances moved to one of them and built herself a new house outlined in desert glass. Bits of amber, amethyst, and sea green. A house of jewels. That's Frances' house. Very pretty. She learned it in sea glass. So they must live near an ocean, or maybe she collected it. And because everybody had plenty of money, why did they have plenty of money? Everybody had plenty of money. Why did everyone have plenty of money? Alea? Right, because they went to go get those black pebbles. They keep finding more. It said in the beginning, they keep finding more pebbles. The more pebbles they find, the more money they have. Jean helped Anna May in the bakery. Does a bakery give you a good or a service? Jocelyn? Good, right. If you go to the bakery and get a cake and cookie, cupcake, it provides you with some goods. Pies and cakes and bread baked in the warm sun. There were 2 ice cream parlors. Was Paul's ice cream the best or Eleanor's? Everyone kept trying them both. In Roxaboxen, you can eat all the ice cream you want. If you go to the ice cream parlor, do you get a good or a service? Demisha? A good, right. The people scooping the ice cream are providing the service, but then the ice cream you walk away with isn't good. Good. Everybody had a car. All you needed was something round for the steering wheel. So you can see them running around with the little round steering wheels up back there. Well, of course, if you broke the speed limit, you had to go to jail. So think about the people. Who works at a jail? Aiden?
Policeman?
Kind of like policeman or like a jailer. Do they provide you with a good or a service? Does a policeman or a jailer provide you with a good or a service? Tanisha? Service, right. They don't give you anything. They don't. The jail had cacti on the floor to make it uncomfortable. And Jamie was the policeman. Anna May, quiet little Anna May, was always speeding. You'd think she liked going to jail. But if you had a horse, you could go as fast Charles and Marion were the generals. The girls had Fort Irene, and they were all Girl Scouts. The boys made a fort at the other end of Roxaboxen, and they were all bandits. Oh, the raids were fierce, loud with whooping and the stamping of horses. The whirling swords of Octillo had sharp thorns, but when you reached your fort, you were safe. Roxaboxen had a cemetery, in case anyone died, but the only grave was for a dead lizard. Let's say you have a pet lizard. Where do you take your pet if they are sick? Fraser, can you tell me? Where do you take a pet if they are sick, Precious? Where do you take your dog if he's sick? You think? Jonathan? The pet doctor. What's a pet doctor called? It's a big, long word for a pet doctor. Alea? A veterinarian. Right. Does a veterinarian provide you with a good or a service? Glenn? A service, right. Each year when the cactus bloomed, they decorated the grave with flowers. Sometimes in the winter, when everybody was at school and the weather was bad, no one went to Roxaboxen at all for weeks and weeks and weeks. But it didn't matter. Roxaboxen was always waiting. Roxaboxen was always there. And spring came in the Octillo, I don't know how to say that, blossomed. And everybody sucked the honey from its flowers. And everybody built new rooms. And everybody decided to have jeweled windows, Precious. That summer, there were 3 new houses on the east slope and 2 new houses on Main Street.